Hey, good morning, everyone. If you happen to be in the same part of the world as me, good afternoon or good evening if you're someplace that's a little bit later in your day. I'm re- I know I start every class by saying I'm really excited. And that's got to be a bit boring by now, but I am genuinely really excited now because so far we've been talking about, oh, here are the technical skills to do this. Yeah. Oh, here's how you can do more of this. Here's how you can do more of this. And now, what I'm going to be talking to you about instead is your responsibilities. So far, a lot of what we've been talking about is the additional power. That sounds a little bit like an evil genius that you'll have as a web developer. But today, we're going to be talking about learning some of the skills that really make up your core responsibilities as a web developer. Oh, morning all. Oh gosh, is it morning in the Philippines as well? Or good afternoon. I'm having a very dippy day. It's a good one, and this one's going to be a little bit short. So today we're going to be taking our first look at applied accessibility, and I'm really excited about this week's guest speaker because this week we're going to be having a really lovely gentleman named Parham, and he's the head of accessibility over at Booking.com, the website that does hotels and all of that, huh? And they're going to be showing us, he's going to be showing us what it's like for a user of a screen reader. So, we've talked a lot about how accessibility is making things accessible, making things viewable, usable for folks using different technologies and different needs. But we still don't have a really clear idea of what that feels like yet, do we? And Parham on Wednesday is going to give us an idea of what that's like. So the details for that are up on the events page, and we'll be able to sort that out. Here we come into applied accessibility. And today we're going nice and slow through this one. This is going to be a shorter session than usual. And I did see somebody ask a really good question say, well, if this is a short session, why didn't we combine these? And even though this is a reason, even though accessibility is a reasonably short section on Free Code Camp, I wanted to make sure we were doing this nice and slow, just because I think this is one of the most important points we're going to cover. Also, very selfishly, I wanted to sneak in different Wednesday speakers on accessibility. Now that I say that out loud, we could have just done two on the same day, couldn't we? Lessons for next time. So, the first couple of ones we're going to do on this are going to feel a lot like last time. We are going to add an alt attribute to an image tag. Oh gosh, this doesn't even work. We're going to add an alt attribute to our image tag. And can anybody remind me, anybody who did this in HTML, why do we use an alt tag for images? Why do we use an alt attribute? If you all can tell me your ideas, I'll go ahead and read through this a little bit. So, alt text describes the image's content and provides a text alternative for it. So, yeah, we can probably think of some reasons around accessibility that this might be useful. But, Ekro makes a really fantastic point. So, this is also gives us a hint of what's going on when the photos can't be loaded. Oh, platypus, you're fantastic. I actually wanted to talk about this. So sometimes you're going to see the word accessibility or the concept or the craft of accessibility written as A11Y. And that still means accessibility. And for me, I thought this was kind of an inaccessible way to write accessibility. I'm not picking on you, platypus, I'm picking on the industry. Because it kind of feels like an in-joke. Unless you know A11Y is accessibility, you're like, oh, what's that? It's another thing to hunt down. And the reason it's A11Y is there's 11 letters in the word accessibility. Yeah, it's just another way to write accessibility. Perfect. Tanya's like, there's 11 letters between the A and Y. Yes, that's significantly more accurate. Thank you. And we've got some other suggestions, folks saying, oh, we use the alt text for maybe if there's slow connections, or Eggroll's got another fantastic point. Oh, if we've got somebody with a screen reader or assistive technology who needs to read the photos instead of being able to see them. These are all fantastic. Let's go. And you should also add them because if you don't, I will personally be very, very disappointed in you. I mean, that's not the best reason. You're going to do it because you really care about accessibility and you want to build web experiences that work best for everybody. So let's look at what a good alt text means. So here we've got good alt text provides the reader a brief description of their image. And you should always, always include an alt attribute on your image. In a minute, we'll learn about when you can leave that blank, but the HTML5 specification says you have to. So this image should be a camper cat doing karate. But as it says here, it's broken. We can't see it either. So we're going to go ahead and add an alt equals, and then we're going to put in the quotation marks. Oh, heck. Yep, that's all fine. And here we've got the image, the alt text explains that camper cat is doing karate. And you might think that good alt text starts with a picture. We can go ahead and leave that off. We don't have to say a photograph of or a picture of necessarily, because this being an image, that's kind of going to be built in. You might want to specify if something's an illustration or if something's a photo, but yeah, really, we want to make sure we're giving people a clear idea of what's going on here. So, camper, cat. Well, and look, so because our image is broken, we're seeing our alt text displayed instead. Oh, karate. We can add the full stop if we want to. We don't have to. Everything's fine. Oh, Tanya's asking such a good question. Tanya's saying, well, you're telling me it's mandatory, and the HTML5 spec is telling me it's mandatory. But if we skip it, it doesn't break. It doesn't give us an error. You're absolutely correct. And one of the big reasons that it doesn't give us an error is because HTML and CSS, and really the way our browsers to ingest information is really fault tolerant. So if we forget to add a semicolon and our last line of CSS, it still works, even though we should have, just because our browsers and CSS are like, well, I get what you're trying to do. But for HTML here, it's been designed not to throw us an error. And that's because, so we've just learned the concept of fault tolerant, the idea of, well, if you break something and it's not too serious, I'll try and make it work anyway from CSS or HTML or from the browser. But now we're going to talk a little bit about backwards compatibility. And I used to have a great example of backwards compatibility because, like, didn't PS2s used to play PS1 games? And unfortunately, that was about that's 15 years ago now, so that's not a good example anymore. But backwards compatibility is when the new version of the thing doesn't break things that were built using the old version. So HTML is really intentionally backwards compatible. We can go, and you know what? Do you want to? We can go and look at a website from 1997, and it's still going to work because HTML has been designed to be backwards compatible. And here, if we really, really, really wanted to make alt text mandatory, the folks on the HTML spec could have made it break, given you an error if you don't add your alt text. But they said, we can't do that because all of these old websites, before we made alt text mandatory, are going to break. And that's not really our jam. Speaking of, let's look at backwards compatibility as an example. And let's look at Space Jam, huh? First, we'll run our tests. We've added our alt text and everything's fine. And I'm just going to be in another window. Looking for this website. So, where is the original Space Jam? I'm looking for the Space Jam website because it was made in 1996. Here we go. So, I'm getting this website up. Not because I'm an especially big fan of Space Jam. I don't have anything against it either, but because this website was made in 1996 and everything still works exactly like we intended it to. I say we like I had anything to do with it. So this website, this was actually kind of cutting edge into 1996. So all of the different sections of this image link to different parts. So this is one big image separated out into different links, which I think is deprecated. It was just a pain to do. Here's our sitemap. But the really real reason I'm showing you this is the backwards compatibility involved. This is way back in the day when we were just starting to, most of us were just starting to play with HTML. We've had multiple releases of HTML since then. And now, because of backwards compatibility, it all still works. And what I'm really excited about as well is back in 1996, we were still thinking about accessibility. We say, "Oh, hey, we're trying to make this accessible. Here's where you can email us if there's a problem." And the fact that they've kept this up to date and kept the accessibility link fresh is really, really inspiring. We're going to come way back in time to the modern day. And now we're going to talk about when alt text should be left blank. And you say, "Well, Jess, you just harassed me about how I must have alt text. Why are you now telling me that sometimes I can leave it blank?" You do have to have an alt attribute all the time, but sometimes you want to leave it blank. And you want to leave that alt text blank if you have an image that doesn't really mean anything. If you've got just like a little white bar that acts as a spacer, if I'm coming onto your website, I don't need to know that that white bar is there if I can't see it. You'd be like, "Oh, yeah, this is a decorative scrolling image that separates the text." I'll be like, "Well, we don't really need that. That sort of alt text is just getting between me and the information I need, and the more information I need. Don't don't make me slow down and oh, well, it's a white spacer bar. I don't need that. I'm fine." So here it's saying you can ignore it when images are grouped with a caption that already describes them. Okay. So if you've got text that says what the image is, that's it. You don't need to have the same text twice. You don't need to have a caption and an alt text. That checks out. But also, like I just said, if it's strictly decoration, that's fine. We can leave it off. And when I say leave it off, I don't mean not have an alt attribute. Check this out here. We have the alt attribute, and that's set to, and I'm going to use the technical language we used last week. That's set to an empty string. So a screen reader would come along and say, well, that's an image. Okay. The alt text is blank. It's an empty string. I'm not going to read that to you. That's chill. So let's go ahead. And we remember that we could put the alt text here, and that would be fine. Or we can put the alt text here, and that's going to be fine. Both of them, a lot. Let me try and actually spell things correctly. We're just going to leave that as an empty string. And that's going to be a really good vocabulary. I'm just giving y'all a lot of vocab words. So far we've done fault tolerant, backwards compatibility. But this concept of an empty string is going to come up a lot in programming. So if you've got the space in your brain, tucking it away is going to be pretty useful. I think that this wanted me to set this as an add an alt attribute, as we've done, and set it as an empty string. Yeah, yeah. And here it says, don't worry, it's not going to show you a sword. We broke this image as well. We're going to run the tests. Everything continues to be chill. Ooh, this is so important. We had a bunch of really, really good questions early on around headings. And headings you can have anywhere from H1 to H6. And one thing I tried to stress is, hey, we can change the size of a heading in a lot of different ways. Oh, and Vish was saying, hey, what if we're not using an empty string? So let's go back. If this is an image that's important to describe, then we're going to use the alt text attribute to describe it. Syntax, right? A cool. I assume it's a samurai sword because it says samurai swords. So if we're not using an empty string, we want to go ahead and describe the alt text if it's important. If we don't think the alt text is important, either it's got a caption that describes it or it's purely decorative, that's when we use this empty string. We will run all our tests. Everything continues to be fine. So when we use headings, H1 to H6, those carry meaning. They're not just different sizes. And we can change the sizes using CSS. We've already looked at how. And if you want to look at how yourself, go ahead and check out the video from yesterday's class. I think that's the one we did that in, isn't it? It might have been the one before. I'm gently rubbish. Let me put some coffee in me and see if that doesn't make me a bit better at this. But H1 through H6 elements should be hierarchical, which means that the most important, and usually there's only one, but you can have more than one, but the most important heading should be an H1. And let's say our heading is types of cats. Yeah, okay. So I think all of the other headings on this page are going to be other types of cats. And then our H2 are going to be our subheadings. And maybe let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to give you a weird example. Let's go ahead and give you a weird example. H1, types of cats. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of this. It's going to come back. I promise. I'm just getting rid of it so that it's easier to see my weird waffling. We're not even going to become a ninja. You're gone. So my H1, I want to say, hey, this page is going to be about types of cats. So maybe my H2 are cats with fur. The other H2 would be cats without fur. Okay. And then in here, my H3. So here our H1 is our heading, and these H2s are our subheadings. So if I'm going to use an H3, that would be a subset of either of our H2 elements. And that sounds weird. You say, okay, but how about cats? Oh, cats with long fur would be a subset of cats with fur, wouldn't it? And cats with short fur. That would be a subset of our cat fur, wouldn't it? Yeah. And if we wanted to have an H4, oh, look at me. Our H4 would have to be something. Oh, and here, list of H4 would have to be something that's a subsection of cats with long fur. So H4 would be cats with long white fur. So really, it's less about the size of the text and the way the text is displaying, but really that H1 is the top heading, H2 are subheadings, and then if we want to create subheadings within our subheadings, that's when we use H3, H4, H5, and H6. So that's something called, we're using these because there's semantic meaning. There's inherent meaning tied to these tags we're using. Sometimes you'll hear the phrase semantic HTML. And it's like, cool, that means we're using this HTML to carry additional meaning. Remember that this has built-in version control. So no matter how much I screw things up, we can always get them back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change the H tags, the heading tags, to give this appropriate semantic meaning. So we're going to make sure that this carries the kind of meaning we think that the author wants. So we're going to change all of our H5 tags to make sure they're the proper level. So right now we've got our H1, which is our main idea of the website. That's cool. We've done that right. And then we've got our H2s for our subheadings. And but then all of these immediately go to H5. And that's not what we talked about, isn't it? We said H1 for the H1 for the heading, H2 for a subheading. And if there's something inside that subheading, that needs to be H3 to carry the appropriate information. So let's change these to H3. And that does change the way they're displayed. If we wanted to keep them smaller, we'd go into the CSS and change those sizes there. If we wanted all of our H3s to be smaller, and we'd go ahead and do that with a selector. I want to call attention to something really cool because we've got a conflict here. I say, I'm starting in H3, but ending in H5. And look at that fault tolerance. It says, well, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, so HTML by its very nature is built to carry semantic meaning, but it's possible to write HTML in a way that doesn't carry a lot of semantic meaning. You say, Jess, what? I say, stick with me for a second. So the HTML that's written here in this example before we change it, that's not good semantic HTML because we jump from H2 to H5 and we lose the semantic meaning that HTML could carry for us. We go ahead and we throw that away. I say, ha ha ha, I did this because I wanted the size to be different. So in this case, we didn't write good, well, we are doing a great job. The people who wrote the example didn't write good semantic HTML. And we've got HTML elements that carry a lot of information. So if you're creating an article, you say, oh, I'm going to use the article element in HTML. That's doing really, really good semantic HTML. But if you say, oh, I've got a bunch of articles, I'm just going to do divs, div. It'll work because HTML is fault tolerant, but that's not very good semantic HTML, is it? So really, I know you all are so tired of me saying, really, it's a point of philosophy. But really, it's a philosophical point. Yeah. Where writing good semantic HTML is really asking yourself as you're writing this, hey, what kind of information, what kind of meaning am I trying to carry? And does HTML have anything that helps me carry this meaning a little bit better? Tanya, you ask fantastic questions. And I know a bunch of you don't chat as much. You never asking silly questions. I'm always excited for a question and you're never ever sidetracking me. So you don't have to, but never feel weird chiming in. So here we've got another H2 subheading. So that makes this our subheading. Let's turn these into H3s so that somebody using assistive technology or a search engine who's reading this gets what we're talking about a little bit more. And we've got one more. We've got another H2 that bops to an H5, and we know that's not what we want. Let's go ahead and change these to H3 as well, just to keep that semantic meaning. I used to teach primary school a long time ago, and I'm like, oh gosh, should I as a sort of word bank glossary? We're gonna run our tests. Everything's fine. Cool. Here's a good time to say it. So the bootcamp and free code camp are completely separate things. They're just nice enough to let us use the free code camp curriculum to teach this. If you've got the cash, they're a registered nonprofit. It can be a really solid thing to do to donate. If you don't have the money, don't you dare spend money you don't have, okay? I want to make sure. So this boot camp's completely free. There's never, ever any obligation to pay money. I just want to make sure that it doesn't make me feel this. It doesn't sound like I'm pressuring you to cough up. Yeah. So let's get back in. What are we doing next? We are going to go ahead and jump straight to content using the main element. And I think this is really cool. So let's go ahead and read some of this because I know it's boring. I know you can read it yourself. I know you've already done it. You've read it yourself. But the question Tanya asked had me saying, oh, do you know what? There are some of these tags that incorporate both a lot of semantic meaning, but carry a lot of accessibility functionality. So these are things like main, which say, hey, 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 this is the main part of the website. Header, which is, this is where I've put the stuff in the header. The footer, this is where I've put the stuff in the footer. Nav is really important where it says, hey, this is the information about how to navigate the website. And then this is what I've just mentioned to say article. Of course, you're going to use article when it's an article and section for different sections of your website instead of div. It says, you know what, by default, your browser is going to render those. You're just going to present those a lot like if they were a div. You say, well, Jess, if the browser is going to render this, if the browser is going to display this like a div, why can't I just use divs for everything? I say, well, because folks using assistive technology need this extra semantic meaning that these contain. Oh, this is the main part of the page, whereas div wouldn't tell them anything. Oh, hey, here's the header. Oh, hey, here's the footer. Yeah. So, what would you like me to do? I'm asking questions to this. I'm just a goof. So, we're going to add opening and closing main tags between the header and footer. And we've talked about this a lot. Main is where you put really the good stuff in your website. I think this is the first time that it's expressly saying, hey, here's what main is for. And it says, hey, keep those empty for now. All right, we'll keep them empty for now. And we're going to go ahead and wrap our content in we're going to wrap our content in, ooh, hang on, let me grab a little drink. Never ever, well, I mean, give up coffee if you want to, but it was a terrible idea for me. So we're going to wrap content in an article element. So this feels like an article, doesn't it? Yeah. But someone, and it's not us, we've been doing it, someone did exactly what I've grumbled about us not wanting to do. And really, Tanya, I hope it doesn't feel like I'm picking on you to praise you so much. But really, ooh, it's a good practice to break an article into different sections. Do you know what? Let's go ahead and look at what MDN says about section in HTML. I don't think that I would personally break an article into sections, but let's look at let's look at what the section element means. Let me ping this into the chat as well, just so y'all have that to hand. The section element generally represents a standalone section of a document, which doesn't have a more specific semantic element to represent it. Sections should always have a heading, with few exceptions. You love how MDN's just like me, where I'm like, you must always do this unless it's one of those rare exceptions. So I don't think that an article would be broken into sections because here it says a generic standalone section of a document. So it's going to be its own thing. But here it says, which doesn't have a more specific semantic element to represent it. And we have article. So we don't need to use section for that. So here we've got section as sort of, oh, here's a section of documentation. I understand they were reaching for an example, but I think I'd want that to be an article too, wouldn't you? No, MDN knows more than I do. They'll say, hey, here's a section of. We don't think this is a full article. Yeah. Does that feel kind of useful? So I don't think we would break an article into different sections, especially because it's going to be the same article. So for accessibility purposes, we want to keep all of that one article inside that one article tag. So folks navigating around using accessible tech aren't going to go ahead and bail out early on that one article. That's such a good question, though. I absolutely love that. I confess I had to look that up. I'd be like, I don't think so, but. So article is a sectioning element, and it's used to wrap independent, self-contained content, which is an article. This might be good for blog entries or forum posts or news articles or a short story, I guess, if you're feeling a bit more creative. So, sectional is new to HTML5. And oh, look at this. This is exactly the question you asked. How fantastic. So it says, hey, article's new, but section's new as well. And it's a little bit different. So article is for standalone content, and section is when you've got groups of related content. So in the MDN example where it said, oh, here are different sections of information about choosing an apple, that would actually be a very, very good example. MDN, I'm sorry I've slandered you. I confess I was wrong. You were right. And in doubt, if MDN and I ever disagree, MDN is probably right. Nope, MDN is definitely right. So, right now, Campercat used article tags to wrap his post on his blog page, but he forgot to use them on the top one. He used a div instead. Or maybe this is a really old website and this was written before HTML5. What we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, this is an article now. And we're going to come all the way down. And we're also going to close that. Yeah, super cool. If you had left it as a div, it wouldn't break anything on displaying your website, but it would be more difficult for people using assistive technology to use your stuff. And you don't want to do that, do you? No. So this is a nice short one. We're just zipping through this. Everything's fine. So we're going to make screen reader navigation easier with a header landmark. And somebody asked me the very first class, like, oh, what does a screen reader sound like? And I think I tried to do a very, very poor, just reading the content of the page. And that was rubbish, wasn't it? So on Wednesday, our guest speaker is going to go ahead and demo, hey, this is what these different pages feel like. This is what they sound like with a screen reader, which is really, really exciting. Also, Parham is just one of the smartest people I know. He speaks like a bunch of languages and he's really cool. I should bring you all less cool guests so I seem cooler in comparison. So we're going to make a screen reader navigation landmark. And that's a lot of words, but what we're saying is, hey, we're using these semantic HTML elements to give you a more of a clear idea of where you are in the page. Cool. And we've already learned that some of these new, I say new, HTML5's been around for, actually, how old is HTML5? Oh gosh, you know what? It's 13 years old. It came out in 2008. Never listen to old people. We have no sense of time. I was like, oh, that came out a couple years. Oh, that came out 13 years ago. But it's Sophia saying soon HTML6. I think HTML5 is supposed to be like, that's it, isn't it? Like, we're not going to do a 6. We're just going to continue to update HTML5. It's like, yeah, like the Halloween movies. We're not going to have a Halloween 9. We're just going to go ahead and keep building on the new franchise. Sorry, you all can tell that I've just been watching horror movies and goofing off. So, we talked about some of these semantic HTML elements that are really, really useful for letting somebody with a screen reader know where they are on the page. We said, oh, main is one of those, and header and footer, article, and so. And here, we're going to go ahead and add our header. So we think where it says training with Campercat, we think this is the header. We think that's just sort of the title and all that. And right now it's in a div. Super common mistake. Do you all know about view source on websites? So if you right click on most browsers, actually let's right click. Oh, wait. We've got the option to view page source. Can we do it? Can we do it? And view page source, look at this. Oh, heck, you can't look at it because, oh wait, this is using a lot of, okay, this one's actually not a good one to view. Let me go ahead and find that Space Jam website again. You all are just being so patient. I really appreciate it. Show me the Space Jam 1996 website. Oh, come on. Does anybody? Nope. So Space Jam 1996 still exists. We just saw it, but I'm rubbish. There we are. So they've moved it to another domain. Oh, there it is. That's a very common sense domain. So we're back at the Space Jam website, right? So it's spacejam.com/1996. I just realized what I was doing in 1996, and now I have to have a conversation with myself. If we say, hey, this looks super weird, what's this? We can view our page source. Are you ready? Are you ready? And this always makes you feel like a spy because we're looking at the HTML they wrote. If we say, here's our opening HTML tag. 1996, I was worrying about learning to drive. Oof, oof. And here we've got some comments. First off, it says, hey, this is copyrighted. Warner Brothers wrote this. And the next comment is bada bing, bada boom, which I suppose is an Easter egg. So it's some kind of little treat for folks who look at this. And then we see our header tag. Our title is Space Jam here within the head. Oh, not the header tag. Sorry, the head. So head existed back in 1996. Header didn't. And in the head, and head still exists. We've got our title and we link to our CSS. And look at all this. So this is before CSS was really as fancy or complicated. So we've got all of our stuff inline. The body contains inline background image, the color of our text, the color of our links. And I think this is a really fantastic example of what, let me zoom in a little bit. This is the CSS was added later because CSS didn't exist at all in 1996, did it? Yeah. Oh, thank you. I've got both of you saying, no, they fixed a browser. The history of the Space Jam website team. I was going to say, I was like, whew. And this is exactly what I use comments for. Don't touch this HTML. And the ads are long since gone. We can ignore those. No. So is that how we link to our CSS file? Yeah. So this looks like a really normal way to link to this looks fine to me. I think I'd probably say style instead of text these days, wouldn't you? But here's all of our website. And I just wanted to be like, oh, hey, let's take a look that view source is just an option. Isn't that cool and weird? And you could do that for many websites. Some websites that use a lot of frameworks or some websites that use a lot of, I know there were a lot of tables when we saw that. There are a lot fewer tables in 2001. We'll just chill about that. The 90s, late 90s, we had a lot of tables on the web. We thought it was a good idea at the time. So yeah, you can view source on any website. If it looks like a bunch of complicated gobbledygook, sometimes that's something with rendering. Sometimes people are using a lot of JavaScript. If you don't understand it, just look for older websites to check out with view source. Looking at view source is a fantastic way to explore. So here it's saying, look, and when you do look at older websites on view source, you'll see a lot of this div. And some modern web developers do it too. So it can be really useful to go through your old website and say, hey, back before HTML5, it's 13 years ago. That's a while. Oh, Felix is making a good point. So saying without CSS and without things like grid and flexbox, these like ways to do this, we had tables to do things. It was a dark time on the web, wasn't it? We were using tables as a layout tool. Do you know what? I did that on my first website, and I completely blanked that out, possibly in horror. So here it's asking us to change these divs to a header to make it easier for folks using screen readers to say, hey, this is where the header is. Yeah, we can do that. It's a solid thing to do. All right, we're going to head on to our next challenge. And we're just zipping through this today. So we've already added a couple of different things here to make it easier to navigate. And now we're going to add the nav as well. So we've got a navigation section on this website. We say, hey, if you want to navigate to, if you want to go to the strength and agility section or the combat or the weapon section, here's a div that has all of those. And no matter what people say, I don't hate divs. Divs are incredibly useful. But when we've got a more specific semantic HTML element option, we're going to use that one because it's the right thing to do. I'm just an absolute goofus. It's the right thing to do. So here we've got something more specific. Say, hey, this div actually holds navigation content. Let's go ahead and turn this div into nav. And really, when you're looking at HTML elements to use, I like to think of it as a rule of specificity because saying specificity is nice and hard. Um, Use the most specific element you can think of because that's going to give people using your website the most clues about what's going on. Look at this, we're just zipping. And so we've added our header to say, hey, if you're using assistive tech, this is where the header is. That's chill. We've added the nav to say, hey, this is the navigation section. You can go ahead and bop over here if you need to see what your options are. Oh, Eggroll's asking a fantastic question. So, how do these semantic elements help users? So, if I'm using assistive technology, or if I'm a bot, a robot coming to scan your web page for a search engine, this additional semantic meaning lets me navigate more quickly. So if I'm using a screen reader and I say, oh, I need to find the navigation options, I need to find the nav, having these inside a nav element means I can head right there instead of waiting for everything to be read to me. If I'm looking for an article, I say, oh, cool, I'm going to navigate to an article using these extra semantic clues. This is such a good question because it's tempting, isn't it? You say, well, I'm really busy, and these are all going to be rendered as divs, div, 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 div. But you'll be a better web developer if you go ahead and use the most specific semantic element available. And also, it's going to be better for your users, especially your users using assistive technology. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's helping computers help humans. Yeah. Well, you're helping a computer help another computer, help assistive technology help a human. Whew. The help will get to a human eventually, won't it? So, because this one used a div for a footer, and we know that, hey, maybe somebody using assistive tech or maybe a bot will want to know where our footer is. Let's go ahead and find where oh, I think this copyright bit, I think that's our footer. And really, footer is an especially good element because almost no one needs this, right? If I'm coming to find the important stuff on the page and my screen reader and my assistive technology says, and here's the information about the copyright, I'll say, I mean, I don't need that. Oh, Grace is asking, how do we center our list items? So we could do that using CSS, a CSS selector, or we could use inline CSS. What is the So we're going to go ahead and that's going to be align text. Where are those list items? Did we have lists? Oh, yes, we've got them here. Yeah, so how do we text? Yep. So we can do that inline. Style. Oh gosh, how do I? inline text align CSS. Is that how we did it? Yes, that's how we did it. So that'll go ahead and center that. We can center the list item themselves by moving this down, I believe. But you'd probably not want to do this inline. Oh, heck. Yeah, so you could go ahead and make those, center those using CSS, or you can lay them out in a bunch of different ways using CSS. That's a really, really good question. We're going to run all of these. Everything continues to be really chill, right? Oh, heck. I promise I donate on my other account. So we're going to improve the accessibility of audio content using the audio element because it's 2021. You're not just going to have text and images. Maybe you want to have a little bit of music or a little bit of sound. So if you're going to have an audio clip, we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and read some of this because I think this is going to feel a little bit different. So HTML5 has an audio element, and that's important first so you can say, hey, this is an audio element, not just a div. There's audio in here. Here's some meaning for you. And I think that's really important. Audio content needs a text alternative. Why would I need a text alternative to my audio content? I'm going to slowly and cheerfully grab some coffee while you, because you will have to tell me. I mean, you don't have to. I'm not the boss of you. Why do I need a text backup for audio content? This is kind of the equivalent of, Felis has got me. This is kind of the equivalent of having alt text for an image. Why might I want a text alternative for an audio clip? Y'all like how I ask you questions whenever I really want some coffee. And Felis has really got this right. This is for folks who have challenging time hearing or who aren't able to hear this or even aren't able to listen to this right now. And the audio tag supports the controls attribute. This shows the browser. This gives your browser controls. So not only is this more accessible, it's also extremely good and cool. So to give this controls, all you have to say is, I'm starting an audio element. Here's the ID of my audio element. Let's go ahead and get an ID. Let's keep track of stuff. And add the controls. You don't have to add anything else. And that automatically by default, that gives you play and pause. I think fast forward, maybe. Let's check it. Oh, it's great for to find content. Let's copy and paste this to just have a look at what the controls will be. Look at this. And what happens when we get rid of controls? Boo, boo. Really? Adding controls gives you this out of the box, very, very cool looking timer count. Oh no, Platypus is pointing out that the audio tag supports MP3, OGG, and WAV, but doesn't support MIDI. And for other people who were building websites who were very old, the W3C took this away from us, and they took it away from us for a good reason. We couldn't be trusted. Back in the late 90s, you used to be able to put a MIDI, and MIDIs are these like tinny little electronica, they're really lightweight files. You used to be able to put a MIDI on your website and have it autoplay. Isn't that terrible? Weren't we bad people? We would put music on a website and be like, ha 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 ha, that will autoplay. We were monsters. We loved it. Without controls, will the audio still play automatically? So even with the controls, the audio won't play automatically. So this by default asks you to click the play. But back in the day, back in the late 90s, the MIDIs would play automatically there weren't any controls. You never saw anything. It would be very hard to stop the music. This was something that happened a long time ago that doesn't happen anymore. and it's just monsters. What will happen if we've entered the type wrongly? So I think it just won't work. So if this is an MPEG and we type WAV, yeah, we get all of our display. I think it just won't work when we try and play it. Yeah. So Vishwa is asking, is this the same that we do with videos? This is going to feel really similar to the syntax with videos. Yeah, that's a really fantastic question. I appreciate that. I swear this the only reason this course is useful is you all just consistently ask fantastic questions. So, time to take a break from CamperCat and meet a fellow camper, Zerziax. Oh, is it Zerziax on Twitter? Is that what we're doing? Whenever I see an at sign, I'm always like, oh, what's the at? Oh, oh gosh, I believe it is. So, if you're interested in the a person we're being introduced to here, time to take a break from CamperCat and meet fellow camper Zerziax, a champion of accessibility and screen reader user. And here we've got a really cool option. We can hear a clip of his screen reader in action. Oh, and this is something that you all really, really wanted, wasn't it? Like, hey, what is it? And I keep framing requests from you all as, hey, even though you all are so gentle. And you're, oh, excuse me, oh, if you don't mind. So yeah, let's look at this in a minute. Let's look at how to embed YouTube videos. Let me go ahead and get through this one, and then we can look at that really fast. The cool thing about having less to do today means we can go ahead and dig into more and more stuff. I think it's going to be the video element, isn't it, for embedding YouTube? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add this. So we're going to copy the context here. Audio, ID equals, what's the ID? Screen reader. Okay. And then we want to add our controls, don't we? That doesn't do anything yet, does it? We haven't got a source for it. We haven't gone and gotten it. Our source is, oh heck. Actually, let me check really fast. Are we going to look at the video in this course? I'm just cheating. I'm always cheating. And looking really fast to see if we're going to look at video in the applied accessibility section. Audio content chart field radio buttons. We're not. So we'll go ahead and take a wait. Color blindness links. So we're not going to look at video in that. So let's do that together with a little bit of our extra time. I think that's a really, really good question, Tanya. So our source attribute is going to be set to Amazon AWS. Whoop, we've got that. And we also, let's come back and we can go ahead and copy the syntax. And here, the type can be equal to audio. Oh, heck. Y'all see what I've done wrong? I was putting our type outside the closing bracket, and that's not where it needs to live. So our type is audio, and it's also an MP3. Okay, so we've got the MP3. Yeah. And we've got our fallback here. We've got, oh, audio. Is it MP? Oh, yes. Oh, gosh. Y'all are just absolutely out here saving me from myself. I should take you all shopping. Oh, heck. This link should match. I'm reasonably sure I copied and pasted that, but my tests are saying, Jess, you've messed that up. And oh, I changed the wrong one, didn't I? So I'm going to pretend that I'm not gonna pretend I'm messing things up in person, but this is a really good object lesson. I goof up really basic stuff all the time, and they still haven't kicked me out of tech. So, I think that there's quite a bit of patience for being quite a bit of a goofball. We're gonna submit and go to our next challenge, but we're really not. We're not. We're gonna come back, and let's look at video. And I think just so I can go get the MDN. So HTML element embeds a video player. Okay, so just like the audio one we've just looked at, which supports video playback into the document. So, hey, if you use the video element, it's going to give you the little video controls, just like it gave us audio controls last time. You can use video for audio content as well, but you know what? Here it's saying you can use video for audio content as well, but the audio element may provide a more appropriate user experience. What I'm going to paraphrase this ad is you can technically use the video element for audio and it won't break, but you better not because it's not as good of a semantic HTML experience. Yeah. So, and here we and the source, I think the source can go ahead and be a YouTube video, can't it? And we'll be able to do a YouTube embed there. Let me go ahead and let's copy and paste this over. And let's see what that looks like. We've got this. Oh, Matchstore is asking a really good question. If you listen to a screen reader is super fast, is that normal? And it is not only normal, it's so normal that we got a little warning to say, hey, this audio clip sounds fast, but this is a normal screen for screen reader users. So for us, a lot of the content where it's going to say header, da 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 da, like that's going to seem super fast. But if you had to listen to every single thing on a website at the speed at which I chat to y'all, it would take a million years to get anything done. So yeah, screen readers are just zipping along, listen to things super fast. Isn't that cool? Let me go and find an incredibly appropriate YouTube video. I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get one of our old ones. Yeah. Oh, look, here's do you know what? Do we love Barbara Oakley? We do. Barbara Oakley was the first person who came and spoke as a guest on our course. And this isn't hmm. Oh, asking how. Yeah, so that's just like what people have gotten used to, that speed. So so W3 schools. How do I use okay. I was gonna say, hey, here's a W3C schools, but they're recommending I use iframe. Hmm. So it looks like we don't use. Oh, sorry. It looks like we don't use the video tag for YouTube videos. It looks like the embed for YouTube is different. Huh. Do you know what? This is one of the most fun things about this, this is one of the most fun things about the web is lots of times you'll say, oh, yeah, this is going to be super easy to do. And I've lied to you. So we cannot easily link to autoplaying YouTube's using the video tag. I was like, oh, of course we can do this. Obviously, YouTube, the largest video provider, obviously they would have made this really, really useful to use using the. Nope. Okay. They don't do this. And Felix is pointing this out at the same time. Felix is saying, Jess, don't bother. They don't do this. And it looks like the way we would have to do this is using iframes, which is kind of fiddly. Yeah, I'm sorry. YouTube does not play especially well with this really, really cool semantic HTML way to include videos. Brutal, isn't it? Brutal. We're going to not do this one again because I'm lazy. Where did we leave off, my loves? I'm so sorry. I was like, oh, this will be super easy. We can do it. It just doesn't work out of the box, does it? We've just done the audio element. I promise we did. And we're going to come into the chart accessibility using the figure element. And I really like this one because when we think about all of the different things that can exist on the yeah. So Felix is making such a good point. I'll say, well, YouTube, when they're putting stuff on their own website, they use it with the video tag. I imagine just a heck ton of JavaScript, isn't it? But for us to use it, we'd have to probably use iframes to embed it, which is a whole woofly thing. I bet YouTube has documentation about embedding and autoplaying. So it's not done with the video tag. I'm sorry. So sometimes we've got things on our websites that are technically images, but really they're different than images. So something like a chart. I mean, it's an image, but it's a really specific kind of image, isn't it? So here, oh, fab. So Felix is saying, hey, there's just a little embed option, which will just give you the HTML. You know what? YouTube's got you. As much as I say, don't copy paste weird stuff off the web. Yeah, go for it. And the figure element has a related fig caption. So here we're saying, well, this is an image technically, but it's a chart. It's got this sort of really, really valuable information. I want to make sure that it's labeled as a chart for folks who aren't able to see it. So for data visualizations like charts, the caption can be used to give you some more of that information. Later on, another challenge is going to show how to move a table version of a chart for screen reader users. So let's take a look at this as an example. We're going to copy paste this example because we love to copy paste examples. Only change the code before us. Look at this. We're rebels. No one tells us what to do. So here we've got a broken image, photo of camper cat executing a roundhouse kick. And that's our alt text. But under it, we've got the caption, Master Camper Cat demonstrates the proper form of roundhouse kick. This is a judgment call, class. Would we want both the alt text and the caption here? Like, they feel kind of repetitive, don't they? I might just have one. I might just have the caption. But this is showing us that, hey, here's a caption. So here's our figure. So here's starting our figure element, which is giving us a little bit more information than just an image. Here's the image within it because the figure, the chart, is just an image, but we think it's important. We've added a break and then the figure caption, say Master Camper Cat demonstrates the proper form. Then we end our figure caption, then we end our figure element. I'm going to take all of this away and we're going to write our own. Everything's chill. So we're going to change the div tag. We're going to change this into figure. Okay. And then we're going to close that figure tag as well, aren't we? Yeah, we like to close our tags, by which I mean I'm terrible at remembering too, so I like to right away. So here we've got a P, but we want this to be the fig caption. Ooh, look at that. It automatically formats it really cute as well, doesn't it? We don't have an image that goes here. And I assume that this is something we'd copy in later, isn't it? We want to run our tests. Our code does have a figure tag. Figure. That's how you spell figure. Oh, I have two. Do I have? Oh, gosh. So where it says only change the code below that tag, you should probably listen to them. I think if you're goofing off and then you forget to delete all of your goofing off, it'll fuss at you, won't it? Yeah, let's keep bopping along. So we're going to do this one and one more, and then we're just going to hang out. If you have any questions, we'll go in, we'll take a look at that YouTube video option as well, because that was a really good question that I did not answer properly. Ooh, sorry, I've got some sparkle going on from some conflicting light sources. So we're going to improve the form field. So the field of your form, we're going to improve the accessibility with the label element. And we use the label element when we were using our forms. We were like, hey, oftentimes this is going to be the same as your ID. And you said, why would I have that? And I say, oh, for accessibility. And now, ha 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 ha. This is exactly what we're doing. So the label tab wraps the text for a specific control item, usually the name or the label for a choice. And this connects the meaning. So you say, hey, I've got this choice. I've got this option in this form. I'm going to connect it to this label, which says the same thing, so that somebody using assistive technology knows what's going on here. And it's the label tags used by screen readers, and it's just like a really cool thing to do. The value of the for tag must be the same value of the ID attribute in the form control. It must. So here we got an example. We got a form. The label says for name. It's really useful if I'm using assistive technology. I need to know that this is where I need to input my name. And this is where we're telling folks, hey, this is a question about a name. And we've got our text that says name here so that folks who are not using screen readers can say, oh, here's the text, here's the label, the visualized label of this, saying what the question's about. And then our ID is the exact same as the for tag. And here our name is the exact same as the ID. And this means that folks using screen readers knows what's going on. We know what's going on. And then when we get our data back, we know what's going on. Oh, wait, when we get our data back, we know what's going on. Yeah. So we're going to come to our email and we're going to make it look like this formatting, aren't we? Because right now we've got our ID as email. Cool. The name is email. So you might say, well, we said email twice. Why do we have to say email one more time? We'll say, well, we need to go ahead and add this for attribute because otherwise folks using screen readers aren't going to have the access to this information that we've put somewhere else. So here, we do have to write it one more time, but it's a little tiny bit of work to make it work. That's a decent thing for us to do. We're going to run our tests. Everything continues to be fine. And this is going to be the one last one we're doing for today. I know it's been super quick. So if you all have any questions, and we'll go look at that YouTube thing in a second as well. So the next form covers accessibility of radio buttons. So we're going to do the exact same thing here and say, hey, we need that for attribute for a radio button choice as well. Yeah, this is going to be really important. The field set tag surrounds the entire grouping of radio buttons to make this happen. It can often use a legend tag to provide a description for the grouping, which the screen readers read for each choice in the field set element. Cool. The field set wrapper and the legend tag aren't necessary when the choices are self-explanatory. So if it's something like Gender, male or female, or prefer not to answer. You probably don't need a field set saying gender, a legend saying, yeah. So here's an example. Form. Let's copy this whole form, shall we? Just because it's hard to see over here. Only change the code below this line. Can't make me. So here, oh heck, we've got our form that we've copied and pasted over. So our form starts here. Then we've got our field set. Okay. And here we've got a legend that says, choose one of these 3 items. Doesn't give us a lot of information, does it? Input ID 1, type, radio, name, items, value 1. And then we put our label here. Label 4 equals 1. And here's that 4 again for screen reader users. And here's the label that our sighted folks are going to be able to see, which is choice 1. This seems rad. Let's go ahead and actually delete all of this properly. Wait, I can just Control Z, can't I? So we've got our form here. But our label tags with a 4 attribute. We're going to change our div to a field set tag. Really, our div didn't tell us enough information. We're going to change this one as well. And whenever we have more specific information or more specific tag we can use, we use the more specific element. Yeah. And this is a really good example of that. It would have worked in a div, but it's cool to do the right thing. I sound like such a dweeb. And now we're going to change the P tag inside it to a legend. Yeah, we've got this as well. Ninja, are you? Okay, that's the legend now. It still displays, but it's going to go ahead and ask this question alongside each of the radio buttons. Here, we've already got our 4 labels done. Please note that we've got our name equals levels. Oh, here we go. Our ID is newbie. The name of the choice is levels. And then the value is newbie again. So if we put the label tag with the correct 4 after the second option, I know it wouldn't be a good experience, but would it work? If we put the label tag for the first option with the correct 4 after the section option, I think not only would it not work properly, but it's going to look weird for everyone. Check this out. If we put this after the second option, would it work? So here's our second option. So yeah, it kind of breaks it for everybody. So not well. I think that might be one example. Yeah, because the label for the screen readers as well would get jumbled. You'd still have a radio button, and it would still be the first radio button, but our ability for users to understand what they're selecting would just completely vanish. Tanya, you ask the coolest, weirdest questions. Please never stop. This is our last one for today, and we're going to be coming back next week and finishing up accessibility. So super chill, super short session for today. And that means we've got a lot of time for questions if anybody has any. While we're looking for questions, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at how we can embed a YouTube video.
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long
Of course, I don't buy YouTube.
You have to finish before the big meeting
starts.
Actually, I did,
in 10 minutes.
Or you're cramming for an exam the
no,
night
how
before,
confusing.
But
This
can't
is
bear
us.
to keep your eyes open
It's
to
us
read
right
one
now.
more textbook chapter.
How distressing.
Or you're reviewing
So if I
a
wanted to
dense legal
share
document
this,
that could change your life
we've
forever.
got the embed option. We click that. Oh, I was right. It is iframes. Ha ha ha. And this gives us the opportunity to copy and paste this and chuck that into our web page. It's not as beautiful and graceful and out of the box. What was it that Bruce Lawson said? That it was built in beats bolt on bigly. So this is bolt on. This is not built in, but this is the way YouTube likes it. So, oh gosh, does it have, look at these options we can add. Ooh, privacy autoplay is start at 00. Oh, no, wait, no, wait, no. So we're not going to add autoplay. That would be monstrous. That would be a terrible thing to do. Wait, we're not. We've got a developer sample. Yeah, we can do that. Cool. So here is how you do a YouTube embed, and we'll just do that one more time. I'm at the YouTube video I want to embed. I'm going to click on share. I'm going to click on embed, and then I can copy and paste this code onto my website. Super chill. Yeah. So, are we going to cover iframes? I think we're probably not in this course, but let's look at the MDN for it. Iframes are nesting browsing content. So iframes are when you're taking a piece of another website and gluing it into a box in your website. Here's an example, and I think this is a really common example. They've used a map. So when you see OpenStreetMap or when you see Google Maps or when you see Apple Maps on a website, that's an iframe. That's another website glued into a website using iframe. Let me go ahead and pop you all this. You all just asked the best questions, and I really appreciate it. If there's material, and of course, we can't cover every single HTML element. Platypus is saying only use iframes when you absolutely must. And I think I agree here. They can get to be a lot. So, depending on what you're embedding, it can be weighty for folks to load. But also, the more stuff you're gluing in from other websites, the sort of messier the experience gets. So maps are a really common one. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Is it? Is this the way we're going to? Oh, so this is a really fantastic way to frame this. And I think this might be much more technically correct. So I was saying, oh, it's gluing another browser, another web page. But really, Felix is pointing out it's not just another website. It's a different browser tab conceptually because you can do things in the iframe. I can zoom in and out on this. So really, it's another instance of a browser that is displaying inside. It's sort of a browser in your browser that's pointing at this other web object. Oh, thank you so much. You were so patient. Each embedded browsing code, it's got its own session history. So yeah, thinking about this as very technically correctly, another instance is really useful. Ah, look at this. Platypus, even before I screwed down all the time, scrolled down all the time, it was just like, hey, 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 just like Platypus said. You can absolutely hear the MDN writer sigh where it's like, look, every time you do an iframe, it's another browser. It's really going to mess up your user's memory. And look at this. Look at this. I love how sassy this sounds, where it's like, look, theoretically, you can use as many as you like, but don't. So we've got the exact same thing we've been warned by our beloved platypus, which is be cool and use these sparingly because they can really, really make it challenging for other folks. Oh, cool. Really, really useful. So, does anybody else have any questions at all? I'd be really, really happy to answer anything you'd like to talk about. Or if there are no questions, we can all escape into the ether. But your homework, you love this, grown-ups with homework. Your homework is to go ahead and finish the accessibility section. Where have I been? Right here. Oh gosh, I did go away this weekend. I went out to the countryside. Somebody was asking, where have I been? Just to the country and back. So if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and kick them out. They're super, super chill. But so are there any alternatives for iframe? You could just go ahead and old-fashioned link. So you say, hey, I want you to take a look at this YouTube video, or I want you to take a look at this website. You could just do a good old-fashioned link and say the open it in a new browser tab. Oh, where should we finish? So hang on, so alternative to iframe. Really, I think your options here are going to be a link or an iframe. Or if it's something like YouTube video, getting the file and embedding that in another way. Oh, Google memory must be out of. And Ed Girl saying, where do we finish for homework? That's a good question. For homework before next session, I'd love to see you finish all of the accessibilities topics before next session. Because this is a really short section, so please finish all of accessibility before next Monday or next Tuesday, whatever. But if you've got the time, because this is a short section, this is a fantastic chance to get a little bit ahead. So, of course, you're all very responsible people and you have dedicated time for studying. But there's lots like Halloween is coming up and people get busy in the autumn. It's a good time to get a little bit of padding. Like if you're caught up with the course, go ahead and see if you can get a little bit ahead. If you're behind, it's cool. Everything's cool. This slower section in the middle is really intentionally so there's some padding to catch up. Yeah. If you've got the chance to join us Wednesday, we're going to be looking specifically at accessibility for our guest speaker, and Parham's just one of the smartest. I keep saying that about different people, but I know lots of very smart people who are very clever. And Parham is absolutely one of those. He's a fantastic speaker. He's got the world's most relaxing voice, and he's so impossibly skilled in this space. Yeah, if we don't have any more questions, I might go ahead. Oh, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to give you your most important piece of homework. And your important piece of homework is the rest of the day, please have the most relaxing time you can with it. So if this homework's much harder if it's morning for you, isn't it? If it's morning, you absolutely must try and have the most relaxing rest of the day possible. If it's the afternoon or evening, you've got a much easier homework assignment there, isn't it? Just, okay, cool. Jess was very angrily fussed at me too. Jill, how can we test our final projects using the CDN link? Which is, let's go ahead and get this back. Where's my brain? You know, none of you can answer that question for me, I confess. So we've got a question about how can we use that using the CDN link? And we're going to come. So the question is, if I code locally on my machine and not in CodePen, how do we test our final projects using the CDN link? I think you're going to have to put it in CodePen to test your final projects. I love that you're doing this locally. This is going to sound like a very janky fix, but if you want to go ahead and have it tested to pass the tests, copy and paste it into CodePen is going to be the answer for that. I love that you're coding that you're working on this locally on your machine. That means you're working with the file structure. In that case, I'd love for you to go ahead and make a CodePen file, copy and paste it over, pass the tests, but really know perfectly in your heart that you did the extra work and you went the extra mile. One of the assignments is a portfolio page. And because I wanted to talk to you about different ways to do this, I know that Kanya, you're going the extra mile. I'm going to do this locally on my machine. Yay. I wanted to have some experts talk to us about different options. So we're going to have a speaker come and talk to us in November. And we're looking at what the date is, so I'll confirm that soon. Who's going to be showing us how to use Netlify, which is a service, and show how to make a portfolio page using Netlify and some other tools. So you can code it locally and copy and paste, but we're also going to have a speaker come and show us how to use some different really exciting tooling around how to build our portfolio page, which is one of our final projects. It's a fantastic question, and I'm really excited to hear you're doing locally. Are you using GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket for version control as well? Oh, and gosh, you know what? This is a really good time to talk about the language here. So Tanya's used the phrase code locally on my machine. And for those of you who haven't heard that before, that's got to be super weird, right? And code locally on your machine means to go and create a file, say, oh, here's a file called index.html or portfolio.html. And I'm going to write my HTML in that file using a text editor. And that could be something like Notepad++ or Atom, or that could be something like Sublime. All the cool kids are using Visual Studio these days, aren't they? Yeah, VS Code. Cool. And a lot of folks are going to use version control with that. So something like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. And that's going to give folks the opportunity to, if you make a mistake, go back in time. Yeah. I think that the next time we run this bootcamp, we're going to go ahead and much more explicitly talk about concepts like that. So Vish was asking, what's the limit of H1s? We've got H1 to ... And we've got 1 through 6. There's no H7. So yeah, you've got H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. And after H6, you are out of headings. I'm so sorry. That's a really good question. Does anybody else have any questions I can help y'all with today? Cool. Grace is also coding in VS Code and not code. Beautiful, amazing, absolutely. But to pass your test for free code camp, you're going to want to just copy and paste that into CodePen. You just have to do it for a second. You get your little tick. I know it's a little bit of fuss, but you all are just exemplary. Most learners are going to feel a lot more comfortable in the sandbox environment. So free code camp has abstracted away stuff like, oh heck, what's a text editor? Oh no, what's coding locally? Oh help, what's a file structure? And they've just abstracted that all away to be sweethearts. So if you're using VS Code, how can I create separate files for HTML and CSS? So let's go ahead and that's going to be really hard to show without showing my whole screen. How can I live preview if okay, so if you're create, let's do these one at a time. So if you're using VS Code, you can create separate files by going onto your computer itself and creating a folder. And this folder, call it whatever you want. So egg rolls, coding, fun. And within that, create a file that says index.html or portfolio.html or test.html. This is going to be the name of your HTML file. If it's going to be your main web page, so what people come to when they type eggroll.ccc.com, the main web page by convention is called index. And just go ahead and create so right click, create new file, index.html, and then go ahead as well and right click and create new file, styles.css. And then what you're going to do is you're going to open both of those files in VS Code or in your text editor. And opening those in there will let you edit them using VS Code and save them back to these files. And we say, oh, how can I live preview this using VS Code is another really good question. So VS Code does have a live preview option, but much more broadly, once you saved your changes to your HTML file, you can also right click on that file in your folder and then say open with Chrome or open with Firefox or open with Brave. And that's going to let you preview it. If you leave that open while you're working, you can just hit the refresh button, which is someone help me. I need an adult. What's refresh, please? Oh, my brain, my fragile brain. Is it H5? Is it H5? It's control H5. So while you're working, to live preview it, right click. Thank you, platypus. You are absolutely just keeping years of life on me. Once you open it in a browser, you'll be able to see what that is. And you just need to control F5 every time you want to refresh that. So whenever you save it, refresh it, and it'll show you what the changes look like. The two ways that you can terrify yourself are forgetting to save or forgetting to refresh. And you'd be like, where is my work? Or at least that's what happens if you're me. Fabulous. Did we have any other questions at all? And these are you can ask anything you want. You can ask anything you want so long as it's polite and appropriate and gently relevant. I don't think this crowd's going to ask anything terrible. All right. Oh, Sanjay, hello. Good afternoon. I'm so sorry that we're just wrapping up. But the video is going to be available on demand. Everything's. Oh, a girl's asking how I'm really chill. How are you all doing today? Oh gosh, and that's an open question. Like, are you all I was going to say having a lovely week. It's Monday, isn't it? Are you all planning on having a lovely week or as relaxing a week as is possible? Oh, you all are always so impossibly lovely to get to chat to. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and let you all go. Remember that your homework is to get at least all the way through accessibility. Oh, it's 5:30 on a Monday for you, Echo. Your day is done. You better spend the rest of the day just chilling then. Like, yeah, it's time for video games. So thank you all so much. You're an absolute gift to get to come and chat to every Monday. I'm going to let you go, and I will see many of you. Tomorrow is going to be the exact same content. There's no obligation to show up. It's so redundant. So tomorrow, the exact same content. Don't show up in case you just want to. Like, you're welcome to, but there's no obligation to. Everything's fine. And then on Wednesday, we'll go ahead and have a guest. Everything's going to be chill for the rest of the week. This is a really light week homework wise. And I hope you all have the easiest possible morning or afternoon or laid back rest of the day if it's your evening. Bye, my loves.